Hey everybody, welcome back to Black Lotus Live, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And our guest tonight is Robert. Is it Bitto?
I think he pronounces Bitto.
Bitto, is it? Okay. And he has a channel here called Mexico Unexplained, and he will be here with us shortly. He was with us backstage, but he was having some computer issues, and he's trying to remedy that right now. But anyway, so how's it going?
Good. I don't like this Christmas time. I don't like it. It's too much energy, too much activity. I don't like it.
I like you got some little. You got your festive lights going on there.
Yeah, I put it. See, that's what I'm saying. It's getting to me. It's affecting me. I don't like it. I like that October energy. That October, pumpkin Halloween energy. That's what I want.
I'm not a big fan of Christmas. I'm really not. I mean, I swear, the older that I get, it's harder for me to get into the holiday spirit. Any holiday. Right. It's like this past Halloween. Halloween is my favorite holiday of the year, and this year I was like, meh. Do we have to hand out candy? But anyway, folks, Kimberly could not be with us tonight. She's having some internet issues, but it is her birthday. So happy birthday, Kim, if you're watching.
Yay, happy birthday.
She said she's having internet issues, but I'm betting she's just kicking back with a drink. So anyway, like I said, Robert Bitto will be here shortly. I think he had to restart his computer. But anyway, Wild, you're a big fan of his channel.
Right. So let me go ahead and talk about Robert Bitto. Robert Bitto is a real cool guy. He's a close approximation to a real life Indiana Jones, in my estimation. Because a lot more ways than one, actually. Okay, so what Robert Bitto does, he goes to Mexico, all over Mexico. It's a big country. And he goes to these little pueblos, little cities, little towns. And he asks and he hears these legends about mermaids and the volcanoes, about witches, about weird cryptids, all these strange stories. He's listening and he's writing them down. And he's got his channel, Mexico Unexplained, here on YouTube. It's he's very consistent. He always does a video on his schedule. And he's written books. You can see them on Amazon.com about the legends of Mexico. So to me, he's kind of like a folklorist. So he's collecting and recording folklore from Mexico. And I don't think anybody else is doing it. Maybe someone else is doing it. But I think that's important work. And he also just came out with a new book, Perfect Christmas Gift. It's a coloring book for children about about the paranormal in Mexico. So it's got like a little Chupacabra, I think. I was looking at all the coloring things he's got in there.
Cool.
So I was very happy when he announced that book as well. I did also I interviewed him on my channel. So if you want to, please subscribe. You could go to Biologist Wild Trees on YouTube. And I did I think an hour interview with him. And we talked a lot about him as well. And I had a bunch of questions for him as well about Skinwalker Ranch that I talked to him. But yeah, that's basically Robert Bitto. He's also got a really cool voice. Have you guys heard his videos? I like his voice.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm anxious to talk to him. I do know that it seems that Mexico is more accepting of the paranormal. Everything, and their government is more accepting of like UFOs and that sort of thing than ours is.
I find that interesting because they seem to have, government, in my opinion, just seems to be more in control there. Mm-hmm. And I would almost think that part of that control would be to not let the people know what's going on. So I find that kind of backwards. And supposedly we have all this freedom, and yet they're hiding stuff from us. So
that is very true.
Yeah, very true. I find that kind of interesting. But I've seen a few things and heard from some people where if you get the natives, that they really have some cool stories to tell in Mexico. So
I asked them once. I asked him one time on my interview, I said, what's one of the differences between how No. I asked him because I really like business. He's a businessman, actually. Another thing you could do. He's got a website where he sells what's called a milagro. Milagro translates to miracle, but what it really is, it's like some kind of like artifact or like folk art, like pottery or something. I don't really know too well, but he sells a lot of that cool stuff. That's why he's like Indiana Jones. I mean, he goes to Mexico to get these little milagro artifacts, then he sells them. But I asked him one time about business. I was like, does the paranormal and does business how does it interact in Mexico? Because it somewhat interacts in the United States. We have TV shows that make money. He told me something very interesting. He said that everything is like hyper capitalism in Mexico. Like everybody's trying to make a buck. So he says that what will happen, that doesn't really happen in America, is that if there was a monster sighting or like a UFO sighting in an area, a big paranormal activity gets on the news, then a bunch of people will go to that area and set up like taco stands, churro stands. They'll try to capitalize on all the activity of the paranormal there. I was like, that's great. I'll get a souvenir T-shirt while you're there,
Yeah. Sounds like fun.
But yeah, I've been to Mexico a lot. I've done a lot of a lot of travel within the United States as far as my biological research. The only other country I've been to is actually Mexico because my family's from Mexico. So I have been to Mexico a lot, mostly as a child, and I did notice some really weird stuff in Mexico. I talked about it here, but there's these weird medicinal rituals that are done, and I got to see them firsthand when I was a child. Yeah.
I'd like to go to Mexico. I've been there, but I went there on a cruise. So we went to like Puerto Vallarta and that kind of stuff, but that's not really Mexico.
No,
I'd like to get into the heart of Mexico somewhere,
Yeah, I'd want to go to. I've been to Chiapas, which is like in the Yucatan Peninsula, so right by the Gulf, really rainforesty area, and they have a bunch of temples there. So that was super cool. I would love to go to Baja. Baja is it's a peninsula actually, on the left side. It's right off of California. But Baja, it's a lot of beaches. They do a lot of toad hallucinogens. That's not why I want to go there. But they do that there. There's a lot of squid and great white sharks, large squid and great white sharks in the water. They're called devil squid, very large 6-foot squid. I want to go there for that. Check them out. Say hello. So yeah, that's a place I like. I like the beach. Like I said, beaches to me are very calming, relaxing. That's the type of area I like. Rainforests I do love rainforests, but actually they're very busy. It's like a rainforest is like the New York City of the animal world. 24/7, there's something happening. Everybody's crawling around everywhere. So
yes, very active. I've never been to Mexico. In fact, I've never been out of the States other than a short trip to Canada, Vancouver.
Okay.
So I have no idea what it's like elsewhere.
What about you?
On TV.
There's Robert.
Have you been to Mexico? Ralph, too, I forgot your name for a second. I'm so sorry. I was like,
yeah, I've been to Mexico.
Oh, okay, good.
Robert, you with us?
Yeah, I'm just going to be a ghost, I guess. I can't get the camera to work. I'm sorry about that. If anybody has the technical expertise to put something really cool up there as an avatar, please do it. Be kind.
Unfortunately not, but anyway, Robert, how are you?
I'm doing great. It's another beautiful day in sunny San Diego, and I'm happy to be here.
Robert, I
introduced you. Glad you could join us.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Robert. I introduced you, and I said, this is what some of the cliff notes. I said you're a very close approximation to Indiana Jones because you go to Mexico, you collect these milagros and these legends that nobody else is talking about. You're collecting all this folklore and writing about it. So I encourage people to also visit your channel, Mexico Unexplained. And I was very excited to tell them about your coloring book, which you just...
I wish I could show it to you.
Yeah, me too. It's okay.
Wild, you're going to need to send me links to his Amazon site, his Amazon page.
We'll put that in the description. That's a good idea, for sure.
Yeah. It's really easy if you enter in Mexico Unexplained in any search engine, I'll just pop up right at the top, and then you can click to your heart's content and follow all the links.
Okay, great.
Wonderful. Perfect.
So Robert, like Wild was saying that, he was introducing you and talking about your channel and everything that you do in Mexico. Can you tell us what is your favorite paranormal story from Mexico?
Well, that's pretty hard to just narrow down to one, but I think I have a personal favorite in the Llorona. And I don't know if you've heard of that before. That is the ditch witch. The word Llorona comes from the Spanish word llorar, meaning to cry. And the story briefly is sometime in colonial Mexico, there was a very beautiful woman, and she was married to this handsome guy who was in the military, and so he had to be away a lot. And she had heard rumors that he was having an affair with someone. So in a fit of jealousy, she took their 2 kids down to the river and threw them into the river. But at the very last minute, she had regrets and tried to save the children, but she couldn't. And so the story goes, forever, for eternity, she now walks along the dry creek beds, flowing creeks, whatever, anywhere where there's water or a water channel, and she's looking for her children. And so my connection with this is I grew up in New Mexico, which is the 48th state of the U.S., for people who don't know. A lot of people think it's part of Mexico, but it became a state in 1912. But in New Mexico, that legend is there big time. And when I was crossing an arroyo, which is it's a drainage ditch, a channel for floods, a flood channel. I was crossing with my 5th grade class. We were on our way to teacher's house for a swim party, and there wasn't enough money for a school bus, so we had to take city buses. Part of the way we had to walk, we were crossing over an arroyo, and we saw this lady in black climbing up the side of this ditch. And we looked at each other and just said, it's the Llorona. And then we just took off. We ran. We were laughing and scared at the same time. We stumbled over each other. And, it was just crazy. And all of us were convinced that this was the Llorona. Then, to make this story weirder, you fast forward to the year 2019, and there is a movie about the Llorona that is, mainstream Hollywood. And I'm like, I'm going to go see this, and I'm going to go see it on Friday when it debuts. So I'm sitting there in the theater, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. There's stuff in the background that I only sell in my business that is custom made for me. And then I had remembered about 6 or 9 months earlier, someone from a props department had put in a big order with me, for some props. I get a lot of orders all the time from very different, places and stuff, and I don't think much of it. And I've had prop masters contact me for stuff in the past, and it never went anywhere, so I never really thought of it. But there I am sitting in that dark theater watching this movie about this apparition or whatever paranormal thing that I supposedly experienced, and I'm seeing my own merchandise. And that was just the weirdest thing ever. So that was a long story, but yeah, that's my personal connection.
Well, had you ever seen, now when you saw her, you were in New Mexico in 5th grade?
Yes.
But so she could be anywhere there's water, not just Mexico then?
It is a legend that goes from the Hispanic Southwest all the way down to the tip of South America. Okay. So it's a common legend, and it has roots supposedly in colonial times, but it could go back even farther than that.
And I do want to emphasize how widespread this legend is. I would say almost anyone from Mexico has heard it. Anybody. I mean, my mom knows about it. It's very widespread in the society. Yeah. And
it's used, I think it's used, I mean, whether you believe in it or not, it's used as a cautionary tale to keep kids away from, rushing water, ditches, things like that. I mean, when I was a kid in New Mexico, I remember playing in dry arroyos with friends, and it's raining maybe 10 miles away, huge downpour, and then we see a big rush of water in the ditch. Yeah. And so, the story could just have its origins there, or it could be something else. But it's to try to keep kids in line, like a lot of different legends,
Right, exactly. I think that that's the basis of most of these legends, I'm not saying they don't have some basis of reality to it, but I mean, it just seems to me that it's cautionary tales, most of it.
Right.
Now, is it true, Robert, that paranormal is more accepted and open in Mexico than the United States?
Yeah, I think so, because there is a huge tradition there, dating back thousands of years of uninterrupted culture. And there is more, it's a different culture than, white Anglo-Saxon American mainstream culture, I would say. And so in America, we tend to be more pragmatic and, look at things and analyze things, from the whole standpoint of the Enlightenment. But in Mexico, it's a different culture where there's more feeling, there's more intuition, and there's more of a deep-rooted belief in a lot of these things, like I said, going back thousands of years, uninterrupted.
Right.
Matthew Creek, I guess it is, says, at Black Lotus Productions in Japan, they have a similar story about a cryptid called... And I'm gonna
Kappa.
Kappa.
Oh, Kappa. Yeah, I've heard about that. Water. It's like a water type monster or cryptid. Which, once again, I mean, it could be just to warn kids not to go in the water, which is a very real danger for anybody that doesn't know how to swim. Interesting.
We were talking about how Mexico tends to accept the paranormal more than we do here in America, but. Robert, while you were gone, we were talking about that, and I had also mentioned that the government seems more open and accepting of UFOs. Have you found that to be true?
That is true, and that's one of the only exceptions when it comes to this whole these broad topics that we look at. Cryptids, legendary creatures, weird archaeology, things like that. They're pretty open about the UFO situation, but they're very closed about everything else. Yeah, they're not, they have a component to what we have in the United States of the Smithsonian that goes around and puts the kibosh on thing. If there's a giant that's discovered in full armor in some cornfield in Iowa, then all of a sudden the Smithsonian comes in and then it disappears. Well, yeah, and we've heard stories of things like that.
Yes.
Mexico has the National Institute of Anthropology and History, and each state, there are 32 states in Mexico, each state has a field office, at least one. And if there is ever a discovery that happens that's a little bit off or odd, they come in and then they shut it down.
Wow.
And they put a lid on it. So, yeah, they are open about the UFOs, but a lot of other things, they just don't want to let that out.
I wonder why. I really wonder why. Ralph and I on our podcast talked to a gentleman that was all about the Nephilim. And, he was talking about how the Smithsonian sweeps in and makes things disappear, basically, where it comes to these giants. And I wonder why.
Well, there's an agenda that we don't know. And there's obviously a narrative that they're trying to protect for whatever reason. We can speculate, but we can't guess the intentions of any of these organizations or individuals.
Well, if I had to guess... go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to ask if you had actually seen any UFOs while doing stuff down in Mexico.
You know what? I have never seen a UFO down there. I almost went to a crash site, but my driver said no. Whenever I go down there and I buy the arts and crafts, I go into the remote areas, and Trees said, yeah, I was called Indiana Jones one time in a Yelp review, the Indiana Jones of Mexican arts and crafts, because I go out to the really remote places to get the unique stuff. And that's how I knew that Llorona movie was using my stuff, because no one else has that. But anyway, I was in the back country of Michoacan, in the remote areas of Michoacan, and we had heard in the town that a flying saucer had landed, and there was a landing site. And I always hire drivers. I don't ever, rent a truck on my own and stuff. I just have the people drive and whatever. So the driver I was with, I was like, let's go see it. Let's go see it. And the guy who had the land, who owned the land where this landing supposedly happened, was charging like 30 pesos or something for anybody to go. Yeah, it's nothing though. I mean, everything is so capitalistic down there in the very petty sense. But I said, let's go. And then my driver said, no, I'm afraid of the radiation. So I didn't get to go. Bummer. But I haven't seen any UFOs myself. Of course, I've heard a lot of things. And there's a lot of evidence that's on tape. Some of it very glaring and very public. Like the Mexicans are fascinated with Popocatépetl. It's a volcano outside Mexico City, and it's been rumbling. It spews ash into, and it's a fascinating thing to watch it. There's a webcam that focuses on Popocatépetl. And during a morning show, a Mexico City broadcast morning show, millions of people were tuning in. It was like Good Morning America down there. They had the camera focused on Popocatépetl, and it was, rumbling or whatever, a little smoke coming up. And then all of a sudden, a UFO comes right out of the volcano, right on live TV, in front of millions of people. Yeah, it's everywhere. But it's interesting because they have this belief that UFOs come in and out of volcanoes, and that the volcanoes serve as portals to other worlds, underneath the surface.
Wow.
That's an interesting theory.
Yeah.
Well, I think they have the same theory about Mountain Shasta in California.
Right.
I didn't know that.
So there are certain places, like there's one place called Peña del Bernal. It's right in the center of Mexico, and it looks like Devil's Tower from the Close Encounters movie. Mm-hmm. And it's a volcanic plug just like that. And it has all this paranormal stuff from Bigfoot creatures, UFOs, even people see Saint Germain appearing in the flesh, and other things, little people, whatever. It's all there, right around this little mountain.
Okay, so that sounds like one of Mexico's paranormal hotspots. Like we have here. Right. We have the Uinta Basin in Utah, where Skinwalker Ranch is located. We have the Hudson Valley in New York City. And I think the Big Thicket in Texas is a paranormal hotspot from my experience. But are there any other spots in Mexico that are like this, that have reported heavy paranormal activity?
Yeah, there's one place called the Zone of Silence, and it's like the Bermuda Triangle of Mexico. And it's a place where it's in the desert, but there's a lot of weird stuff that's going on there. There's a nature reserve that's there. But people have always said that there's, weird stuff going on there. There's magnetic anomalies. In fact, there was an aviator by the last name of Tinoco, who was like the Mexican Lindbergh, Charles Lindbergh. He was an aviation pioneer, and he was the first person to note that his instruments on the panel of his plane would go crazy when he flew over the Mapimi zone. And people have seen black triangles. There have been weird creatures there, and then cactuses grow in a really deformed way. And some people believe also that there's a vortex that sucks in space debris and other things. And there have been supposedly some crashes there, some saucer crashes and stuff.
Is that area close to anywhere where you explore? Have you ever been close to that area or in there?
No, you know what? I've never been there. It's really remote, and it's not near anywhere where I would go buying. So I've never explored there. But it's supposedly a very interesting place. So it might be worth a trip.
Yeah, definitely. Dude, Robert, I'm thinking like, hey, next time you go to Mexico, next year, I want to go. I want to tag along with Indiana Jones. I could be that little. I could be that little Asian kid from Temple of Doom with the baseball hat.
Hey, but I'll make you work. I'm sorry, nobody comes along for free.
I assumed I would have to work. As a mule or something.
Robert, I got to ask you, what are your thoughts on the Chupacabra? Because they're like two separate creatures that have been reported. Like here in the Southwest United States, they have a form of a Chupacabra, but I mean, really, I just think it's a coyote with mange. But the reports that come out of Mexico and South America, the thing looks, I don't know, almost demonic. You know, spines, spikes down its spine, and that kind of thing. It looks like a demon.
And that was my choice for the cover of my coloring book. That Chupacabra number 2.
That's the first thing. That's the first thing I'm going to color when I get the book. Is the Chupacabra.
Okay. Well, yeah, there are 2 different types, and I think the southwestern and more Mexican one is the coyote one. You know, the dog-like creature that has fur, you know, that's mangled and stuff like that. But the one that originally debuted out of Puerto Rico is the one with the spikes, and that is more reptilian than dog. And they kind of got confused because some reports in Mexico have been of the spiked variety, and then some have been of the furry variety. Okay. So, you know, there's a mix, but that whole phenomenon has died out. It was really popular in the late 90s.
Right.
But the sightings are, you know, I guess they come in waves or something. I don't know. But yeah, I haven't heard recently of any sightings in Mexico of either type.
Okay. Interesting. I was going to ask, I'm sorry, were you going to say something, Ralph?
No.
Oh, okay. If I could ask real fast, Robert, what is the kind of crazy sounding story in Mexico? I mean, they're all crazy, but of those crazy ones, which one do you think is actually true? Probably. I know there's probably several.
There are a couple, yeah. I would say I'm most inclined to believe that there are some of these cryptids that could be real, like the lechuza, the gigantic owl. And that's one of my most popular shows on my YouTube channel. And if you go to that show, you can look underneath in the comments, and the comments are amazing because people will share what they've seen. And so if you have people saying they've seen the same thing across various distances and, you know, different times and places, well, you want to like pay attention to that, I think. And so there could very well be a gigantic owl. There's some myth along with it. You know, it's the owl is really a witch, a woman who's been marginalized, and she's turned to the dark arts, and then she turns into this hideous big owl. You know, that's a legendary thing, but it could be describing a true animal that we just don't know about. Because people don't realize Mexico is a vast place. We think, and it has very, very different terrains and, you know, climates and everything. People think of Clint Eastwood movies and desolation and everything, but there's a lot of empty wilderness, forests.
Rainforests.
Rainforests and also pine forests that go so high, they go into glacial zones on some of these mountains where there's permanent snowpack. And that's where supposedly these Bigfoot creatures live too. But the gigantic owl would be very easy to have that be a real creature. And also another one is called the onza, which is a long-legged, people think it's a holdover of the prehistoric North American cheetah. So it's a mountain lion with long, skinny legs that have spots on it. And there have been actual carcasses of this. And there's one that was sent to Texas to be studied, one that was recently shot, and I haven't followed up on what the results were for that. Wow. But so there could be this wildcat that's out there. When the Spanish first came to Mexico, Montezuma, the emperor of the Aztecs, welcomed the conquistadors with open arms, and they were invited guests. There was no hostility at the beginning. It was months and months later. But one of the things, Montezuma showed the Spanish his palace, and he had a zoo. Now, there were 4 different wildcats in that zoo. One was identified as what we would call a mountain lion, a puma, or a cougar, same thing. The other one was identified as a jaguar. And then the other one was identified as a bobcat. Well, the 4th cat, which one is it? And people believe that the Spanish actually even saw a living example of this wildcat that could still live in the mountains.
Wow. Huh. Very cool. Very cool. I like that story.
Yeah. Was there a difference in the sizes?
Of what?
Of the different cats.
Yeah, well, they were distinct. I mean, they were distinct 4 different types of cats, and they were described. So you know, they had the cougar, they had the jaguar, and they had the bobcat, which are, you know, they still live in Mexico.
Right.
But then the 4th one, they didn't know what, you know. We look back and said, well, there isn't a 4th one, but they described it. They described it as, you know, a kind of like a cougar, but with longer legs with spots. So they think it was a North American cheetah from prehistoric times that still may exist, because there are current reports of it.
That's really exciting, because as a taxonomist, like I think I'm a taxonomist a little bit, so I study new species of animals. I study the different species of animals, and I describe new species to science. As a taxonomist, like the real diamond in the crown is large vertebrate animals. So discovering a new species of cat or bird, that's a pretty big deal, because there's not that many left out there. Most of the new species are like, you know, microscopic, live in a deep ocean, or don't have any bones. So that's really cool. If I could, if somebody could discover one of those animals, that'd be awesome.
Right.
Well, I think it's like you said, Robert. I mean, Mexico is very vast. It's not like the United States where, you know, almost every inch of land is taken up. You know, I mean, and so, you know, these things could exist there, I think.
Well, the U.S. is not so crowded as we've been told either. I mean, and I think there are a lot of cryptids and stuff in the United States that could exist. I mean,
well, sure, yeah.
There's a lot of empty land in the U.S.
Yeah, like up in the Northwest with the, you know, in the woods, and then take, for example, Texas. I mean, and New Mexico. I mean, talk about a vast desert. Driving across Texas is like driving across the moon, only it's not as exciting.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, so yeah, I think that's why we get these reports of thunderbirds, you know, which, in my opinion, could possibly be pterosaurs that have continued to exist.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
If I was gonna try to photograph or catch one of these terror birds, or the lechuza, I'll say lechuza again. Once again, that is a very pervasive story in Mexico. Everybody knows about it. My parents used to scare me at night by telling me there was a lechuza outside my window. I mean, it's this giant owl story. Oh, and
I'm so sorry to hear that.
My mother's parents did it to her when she was a little girl. They actually had to sleep outside because it was too hot, and they would be like, "Hey, be careful! The lechuza is going to get you."
Oh no!
Anyway,
that's not nice.
I mean,
so if I was going to catch one or catch good photos, I would probably. My brain always thinks this way. I would probably get with someone like Robert, write down all the locations of where it's at to try to find like a course where it likes to live. It probably likes to perch up high, so I might want to look there as well. And then if I could write down a course of where it's seen, and try to find out what time it's been seen, I would honestly probably have a big stinking pile of rotten fish to attract it. They smell really good. I mean, that's how they get their food. And just wait for it to come down and take a picture.
And then what?
As long as it doesn't get you instead.
Then what? Right, yeah. Then you're on your own, right?
Yeah.
Robert, what are some of the most popular ghost stories down in Mexico?
Well, there's There, in the bigger cities, there are a lot of different ghost stories. There's one that comes to mind that in the Mexico City subway, there is an indigenous warrior, an Aztec warrior that's been seen in full battle clothing, wandering around the subway in Mexico City, thinking that he's still in Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire.
That's
and
wild.
People have sworn to have seen this guy. And I haven't. I mean, I've been in the Mexico City subway, I don't know how many times. But there's that ghost that's really big. Then I went to a place in the state of Guanajuato last year called the Siete Luminarias. They're volcanic craters. There's 7 of them. And there's a lot of paranormal stuff that goes on in those craters. Some of them have water in them, and then people think that the lakes are bottomless or whatever. But in one of these craters, there's another legend of a woman who is trapped between dimensions, supposedly. She's indigenous, and she's speaking a language that no one knows. And if you're hiking around there, she'll appear on the trail and like beg with you and plead with you as if she's trying to return home. And I went to that crater. I didn't see that either. There's another really popular legend, I'll end with this, of a little boy called Nachito. And he lived in Guadalajara. And he was so scared of everything, whatever. He had a heart attack in the middle of the night because he was so afraid of the lightning and there was a storm or whatever. And so they buried him in the Santa Paula Cemetery near the cathedral. And people believe that he's there, every night he's there playing and, throwing the ball around or whatever. People have seen him so many times. In the Guadalajara Ghost Tour, that's like the biggest place to stop. And people give him toys. By his crypt, there's people will put teddy bears and stuff like that. And then some charity always comes and takes them away. But he's buried above ground. His crypt is above ground because he was afraid of the dark. And so he didn't, the parents said, let's not put him in the earth, because he died because he was afraid of the dark and all the things happening. But that Nachito is probably the most popular ghost legend in Mexico right now.
You said that they were gifting him with other toys. Was he ever seen with any of those toys, those gifts?
Yes.
Oh.
People have, cool. Yeah. And I mean, I believe Nachito's even been photographed. So,
cool.
Yeah. If you look it up, I'm sure there's stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. But a lot of this stuff is in Spanish. And, that's where I come in. And that was the whole beginning of Mexico Unexplained, because I saw that there was a lot of stuff in Mexico that was purely in Spanish that was never leaving the country. And I thought, hey, I think the world needs to know about this. So there's that.
Well, that's cool. Thank you.
Aside from that lady that you saw by the river, have you ever witnessed anything paranormal while you've been down in Mexico?
No, I haven't. I've witnessed some paranormal things happening in my retail store when I owned a retail store. Bringing all of this merchandise back, people had cautioned me that some of the merchandise that I was buying had some intentions attached to, that. And I didn't believe in it. I was like, yeah, whatever, fine. That's just, made up stuff. But I would have things in my store at night move. And I had witnesses to that too. So there was a little paranormal activity, I thought, going on in my store. And some people said it was connected to the merchandise. I don't know.
Interesting.
I would believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Gigi,
the Nachito story?
I hear that.
I don't.
I'm sorry.
I just asked, was the Nachito story, was that, how old is that story? How long has that been around? Is it recent?
I think it dates back to the early 20th century or the late 19th century. So I think it was in the 1890s, yeah.
Oh, geez, pretty old.
Yeah, it is pretty old. Yeah.
So if I
There's
was
also,
going to,
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, so if I was going to go take a trip down there to Mexico, what would be the one place I'd have to see?
Well, it depends on why you would want to go there. One place you'd want to, I would just start in Mexico City and use that as a jumping off point, because there's a lot where you can, take day trips from there. And Mexico City is a big city in its own right. It has like 25 million people, and there's lots of history there. It really depends on what you want. If you want nature, beaches, whatever, there's something for everyone. But I would start.
Well, I'm talking about in the more of the supernatural or paranormal or.
Yeah, I would say
aspect.
Mexico City, definitely, because there's also stories of folk healers there. I've done some profiles of them. Mexico City's a big place for that sort of thing. And the ghost stories and the UFOs, the volcanoes right there. So yeah, right. I would start in Mexico City for sure.
I'm sure they do offer this, but did they offer ghost tours or paranormal tours in Mexico City?
Sure.
Take? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Of course. Very cool.
So I want to break in here real quick. For those of you who have just joined us, Robert has a channel here at YouTube, and it's called Mexico Unexplained, and I have that listed in the description, and so definitely check that out. You're going to really enjoy it. Also, we are not yet monetized by YouTube, so if you enjoy what we do, go to the link in the description called Buy Me a Coffee, and you can. It's just a one-time donation. It's not like Patreon where it's you're committed to it. It's just a one-time deal, and you can donate whatever you want, and would really help us out. And don't forget that we have a group at Facebook called the Black Lotus Discussion Group, and there we talk about all the things that we talk about here on YouTube. And it's a great bunch of people there. We don't have trolls there at all. And Ralph and I are always monitoring the things, so no issues there. You know how a lot of these groups on Facebook are just, they're filled with trolls, and they're posting stupid memes and stuff like that that doesn't have anything. They don't have anything to do with the paranormal at all. And we don't do that. We don't allow that kind of stuff. So definitely check us out there. But yeah. Terry, have any other questions?
I love hearing about all the paranormal and stuff like that. And we've talked about, the apparitions, ghosts or whatever. But I was kind of curious on how the Bigfoot story is down there, how it's the same or different from maybe what we've been hearing here in the States.
Well, that's a good question. There are two different types of Bigfoot creatures. One is called the Sisamite, and the Sisamite is skinny and he's shy and he lives in the jungle areas. The jungle areas of the Yucatan, Chiapas, and then also into Guatemala and then Honduras and El Salvador. And the ancient Maya talked about the Sisamite, but they looked at it as just like any other creature of the forest. But he keeps to himself, and he doesn't really bother humans at all. He's very shy. Then, if you go north to central Mexico in those pine forests that I told you about, going up to alpine conditions and glaciers, in those forests in Puebla and around central Mexico, there is a creature supposedly that lives there that is like the Bigfoot creature of the Pacific Northwest. It's called the Cuatlacas, and it's huge. It's like 7 feet tall and big and burly, and it gets very angry if you enter its territory. Now, if you want to talk about how remote some of these places are, they're the places where this has been sighted in Puebla, in the state of Puebla, only were first explored in the 1880s. That's how recent it has been untouched. And so this is the domain of this big creature. And with more and more population encroaching into the territory of the Cuatlacas, people are going and cutting wood and squatting in these, forests. There are more human encounters with this creature, and in very violent ways. Cool. There are a lot of stories that are coming out now.
Well, you're saying violent. Are you saying that people are getting attacked, or?
Yeah, people are getting attacked too. Even the point where there's one story where there were a group of guys that went into the forest to cut timber illegally, and they made camp for the night, and they heard all of this grumbling and rustling and stuff in the woods. And when they woke up, they heard a big crash. The creature supposedly had taken a trunk of a tree and threw it at the truck and totally disabled the truck. Yeah. It just is not very happy with humans encroaching in on its territory.
That happens occasionally here in the States too with Bigfoot, where they'll throw like a log or a tree trunk or rocks or something like that. There's been a couple of reports where people say that they've actually been attacked, but it's pretty rare,
Right.
I mean, very, very rare. The rock throwing thing, I think, is just a warning.
Right.
To, you're in my territory, back off, that kind of thing. But I think that they have the dexterity to be able to hit you if they wanted to hit you with a rock. But you don't hear about that. You just hear about rocks being thrown at people, or near them rather, But as far as the creature you're talking about, the Sasquatch here in America, they don't tend to be violent.
Right? Yeah, I guess so. I mean, you would really have to, just like any other animal, I suppose, you'd really have to anger it or disturb it in a pretty profound way.
Mm-hmm. Right. There's very few animals that just come straight at you, just see you and just gonna come get you. Most of them try to avoid you. Robert, have you heard any stories about people leaving gifts for these Bigfoot type creatures as an offering?
You know what? They do that for the Sisamite in the southern shy one.
Yeah. Okay.
But the big Cuatlacas, no, people just want to stay away from that. Anybody who knows about the Cuatlacas creature in the forests of central Mexico, they just stay away. And they think that people are just insane to be going in there and cutting wood illegally like that.
Interesting. And do they, when they do the gifting in the southern parts with the skinny one, does it ever leave anything behind, like re-gift? Like you give it something, it gives you something back?
I've never heard of that before. No.
Okay. Interesting. I'm asking because some of that, I've heard that happen sometimes in the United States. But I just want to see if it's transfers over to other places. Can you tell us more?
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to add the gifting thing. In Mexico, there's also two little creatures, little humanoids, the Cheneque and the Alush. And you're supposed to leave them gifts or else they'll mess with you. And that's something that's very, very common. If you have a cornfield, there's usually an Alush or a Cheneque that's assigned to the area you're living in. And so you want to leave him cigarettes, or, just like a mischievous leprechaun who'll steal your keys, who'll, turn things upside down, whatever. So there's that gift giving thing for those two tiny creatures too.
And what do they look like? Like elves?
Yeah, you know what? They look like elves. Some of them have pointy ears. Yeah. The description of the Alush and the Cheneque, they can vary. And in a lot of reports, their feet are backwards, which is kind of neat.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah, and their feet are backwards.
What country, what state or area of the country are the Cheneque from, these little guys?
The Cheneque, that's an Aztec word. So the Cheneque is mostly central Mexico up to the north. And then Alush, that's the Maya word for the same creature. And so that's in the Yucatan. So, yeah.
Interesting. Now, I was going to ask you about this great white shark that's been reported.
But it's not white. It's not white.
It's black. It's black.
That's right.
The great black shark. Okay.
Tell us more about this large black shark, please.
It's some people think it's a megalodon. It's El Demonio Negro, the black demon. And it supposedly lives in the Gulf of California, also known as the Sea of Cortez. That's the arm of the Pacific that comes up between Baja California and what the Mexicans call mainland Mexico.
So it's just like a little sliver. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's that inlet. It's the Sea of Cortez or the Gulf of California, whichever term you want to use. And it's been cited, this creature supposedly has been cited for about 60 or 70 years. But people get really angry. I mean, I've had some really nasty emails about this. I don't know why. People are like, no, you're just spreading misinformation. There's no evidence. It's all just hearsay. It's all just sightings and stuff. Well, there hasn't been any bones found. The physical evidence is pretty scant, but there's a lot of eyewitness accounts. So I don't know where to go.
You can say that about just about any type of cryptid or.
Yeah, I mean, almost all legends. I mean, there's no real hard evidence.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I've also seen a lot of pushback from anybody talking about megalodon, especially shark scientists. Shark scientists on social media, they detest the idea because I think they're dumb, but I think they think it makes them look bad. But I'm like, you're just closed-minded. You're a terrible. Shark
scientist. I wonder if those people are the ones who are contacting me.
Probably.
Because I've gotten some really lengthy, nasty responses about that, and I have to always say, hey, listen to the introduction of my show. Right. I mean, I'm not saying that any of this or all of this is fact. I'm just presenting the information that I've uncovered. You can make the decision on your own whether you believe in it or not.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because, this is what I would say to a hardcore skeptic, a skeptic who does not believe in anything to do with the paranormal. Okay, this is what I would say to them. I'd be like, look, let's say you're right and there's nothing to the paranormal. Well, the fact still remains that people are talking about it, and that is part of our history. These stories are being passed around. So I think just doing what you're doing, just writing down the stories is important history. Even if they're not true, that aspect is still important to categorize and retell these stories because it's happening.
Exactly. And it's like I always say, question everything, I mean, there's nothing wrong with questioning your research.
Right. Yeah. And what? I have the right to learn too when I do these things because I'll put out something and then people in the comments, I just love the comment section of YouTube because then people will comment and add to what I had said, or they'll say, I had this experience, you might want to follow up on this, and then I get to learn too. And awesome. When you put it out there, then you're going to get people adding to your research. And then also, a lot of these people have told me that they're grateful that I'm doing what I'm doing because they felt alone, in seeing this creature or whatever, I'm glad there's someone else that, or a whole comment section full of people who claim to see the big owl. People have told me things like that. I'm glad you did this because I thought I was crazy. I thought I was the only person. So yeah,
that's why we started Black Lotus is because Ralph and I are paranormal magnets, and we wanted people to know that they're not alone and they're not crazy, that these things do happen. And when you experience it, you often do feel like you're crazy because society makes you feel crazy about it if you come out about it. Yet even if you don't come out about it, you're playing with your mind. You're playing a dangerous game with your mind because you're starting to think, well, God, did I hallucinate this? Or, maybe I am nuts. Well, no, you're not. There's a lot of people out there who have experienced this stuff,
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, folks, I think we're going to get out of here for the night. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit that little bell so you're notified every time we do upload. Until next time, keep thinking and question everything.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
you
you,
for
Robert.
coming.
Thank you, Robert.